Just a quick reminder then that today's session is about trauma-informed awareness. This isn't therapy, it's going to be a practical and grounded in workplace insights. So I'm delighted to be joined by Ellie Snooks from Way Forward together, and today we're going to be exploring how trauma-informed principles can help your organisation to improve well-being and reduce sickness rates, build trust and psychological safety, boost retention and strengthen team cohesion, and embed your company values in a genuine and ethical way. So by the end of the session, you're going to understand the 6 core principles of trauma-informed approaches, and you'll leave with something you can use immediately with your team. It's not going to be any jargon, no fluff, just insight straight away. So Ellie, thanks for being with us today. Over to
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you. Afternoon, everybody. I'm going to put my slides up now, but what it means is I can't see you and I can't see Ali. And I also, for some reason, can't see my notes, which is what we've been trying to work out, because either you can all see my notes or nobody can see my notes, and we're not sure what's going on there. So if Ali's going to keep an eye, and she's going to encourage you to fill in the box in the chat box when I ask you to contribute things, and she will be able to feed that through to me by speaking, because I can hear voices, I just can't see anything. So bear with me, wish me luck, and we will all get through this together, I think. Um,
Sometimes it's the
okay,
simple things, isn't it, that cause us the most challenges.
okay. You can
Great.
see that, yes?
Well, I can. Hopefully,
Okay, can everybody see that? Have
yeah,
you got any
yeah,
nods?
we got some
Yeah,
nods and some
and
yes.
you can hear me, so that's good as well.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So my name is Ellie Snooks. My company is A Way Forward Together, and I am a trainer in and a consultant in trauma-informed awareness and trauma-informed practice. And what that means is that I work with lots of different organizations, currently all over the country, but one day maybe all over the world, helping them to understand or encourage a culture of curiosity and of safety within the workplace. So I'm going to spend the next, well, we've probably got 45 minutes or so now, going through some of the considerations for your organizations, for your beneficiaries, for your staff, for your team members, in terms of trauma informed practice. So before I start, I think it's really important that you all understand my mission and my values, especially in um, the world today. It's really important to know that you're safe here. That my mission is to ensure trauma awareness isn't just a conversation, but it is a fundamental part of how we lead, support, and grow together. And we can all exist in a trauma-informed way, and we will all benefit as a result of it. I'm determined to create safe spaces where people can spaces where people can feel safe, connect, and explore ways to make positive steps together. So that is it in a nutshell, really. My values are around inclusion. Everybody is welcome here. This is a safe space for everybody. That prevention is far better, infinitely better than a reaction and then a cure. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a safe and engaging environment that stays that way. So we're preventing sickness, we're preventing losing staff, we're preventing a toxic work environment by doing the work and building the culture in the first instance, so that we avoid going down those dark pathways that begin to make people feel really unsafe and really unhappy. So listening and communication is really important to me. I need to listen to you, you need to listen to me, and we all need to be able to communicate effectively with each other to move forward. But I can't see you, which does make connection quite tricky, but I will do my best. Human connection. We are all human beings. I think in the world today, that's easy for people to forget sometimes. And there is a lot of trauma in our communities and in our world currently. But if you bring it back to the fact that we are all human beings navigating our way through the world, as to the best of our ability, I think that enables us to connect on a more foundational level. Can you see my slides moving? Just checking before
Yeah.
I. Okay, good. Okay. So trauma-informed practice and trauma-informed approaches began in the late 1980s, early 1990s as a result of medical study, and it looked at people with obesity and a weight loss program. And whilst all those people were really supported on that program, they did really, really well. And as soon as they were sent back off to their homes to carry on that program, and then come back in 3 or 6 months later, what they found through that program was that everybody had more or less everybody had regained that weight. And so they started to ask the questions around why that might be, why that behavior may have showed itself. And it turned out to be based in adverse childhood experiences. So that is trauma within childhood showing itself in adults in lots of different ways. And in this instance, it was through obesity. Um, so there were a couple of doctors who met in America, and I'm whizzing through this, by the way. I would spend a lot longer on this if we were here all day together. Who got together and created this table of adverse childhood experiences around neglect and abuse, and created these 10 adverse childhood experiences. Um, uh, uh, which were like things like parental loss or separation, incarcerated parents, substance misuse, mental health issues, etc., to look at how many people in that group had experienced adverse childhood experiences. And that is why they were demonstrating obesity as an unhealthy coping mechanism to deal with the trauma that they'd experienced. And lots of us have unhealthy coping mechanisms, whether it stems from childhood trauma or whether it stems from extensive trauma in our adult lives as well. There are loads and loads of leading experts on trauma, some of the more famous ones that you may have heard of, that have said things that really struck a chord and really kind of make you realize that it isn't rocket science and it is all around connection and curiosity. So you've got Dr. Gabor Mate, and he said that the essence of trauma is the loss of connection to others, to ourselves, and to the world around us. And I think that is it in a nutshell. If we can just connect and be curious and listen to each other, we will feel a lot less traumatized, a lot more grounded, and a lot more able to conduct our lives in a safe and satisfying way. Um, the most important thing in trauma recovery is the ability to experience safety, control, and connection. And that was Bezel van der Kolk, who's another leading expert. And often people who are traumatized have lost control of a situation. It has become out of their control. So regaining that control in their life wherever possible is a really, really important thing for them. And if something's going on, sometimes people can throw themselves into their work because they've got something going on in their personal life that they've lost control of. And if they feel safe and able to control their working environment, that helps them cope with that situation a lot more effectively, or actually not so healthily because all they do is work 24/7 and don't deal with that problem that's happening in their personal life. Um, so we're going to look at what is trauma-informed practice, look at the link to trauma-informed principles and business outcomes, why trauma-informed practice matters for businesses, and the 6 key principles of trauma-informed practice, what's behind the behaviour, psychological safety in the workplace, why language is really important, and goals and aspirations. So before I go on, I'd like you to do something for me, and I don't know if you're doing it or not, but I would like you to close your eyes or look away from the screen just for a moment whilst I talk you through a little scenario. So if everyone's able, I'm just going to ask you to imagine a scenario where you're walking along a lovely warm beach. You might feel the sun on your face. It's nice and sandy, not pebbly like where I live. You might be carrying your shoes and feeling the barefoot. You might feel the waves running over your toes. You might be with loved ones, with a dog. You might be on your own, just enjoying that peace and quiet, but you really feel like at peace and that your nervous system is really relaxed and you're in a really good space. And then if you look back at my screen now, this is what you hear coming up behind you in the water. And so you turn around, and I have been told before that these crocodiles look like they're quite friendly and they might be smiling, but I can assure you that they're very hungry. They are hungry, they're very hungry, and they're very angry, and they are walking towards you. So from that relaxed perspective that you were in a moment ago, you're now suddenly faced with these very angry and hungry crocodiles coming toward you. So I want you to think about inside of your body, so your physiological reactions, your emotional reactions, and your behavioral reactions. And if you can just put in the chat box for Ali to kind of comment on a few, what you might feel or what you might experience in that moment, just for a couple of minutes. If they start popping up, Ali, and you can read a few out.
Yeah, Heidi's saying fight or flight,
Yeah.
Linda fear, anxiety, running, panic, terror and the need to run, urge to run, panic, running, I would
Yeah,
freeze,
lots of running.
fear, panic, fear, fear. Yeah, want to
Yeah,
run as fast as I can in the opposite direction, definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
and I sort of had that churning stomach feeling in my stomach.
hmm So thank you for that. So all of those things are responses that you would have outside of your control when you were faced with a terrifying situation. So somebody mentioned fight or flight. Yep, that's absolutely. I don't fancy my chances fighting one of those crocodiles. Flight is definitely an option. I learned through this training that if you run in a right angle, crocodiles can't do that. So you will be able to get away. That's my tip for you to take with you to Australia next time you go. Um, and there is also freeze, which wouldn't be ideal, would it? But it does happen. And then the last one is fawn. And I don't know if any of you have heard of fawn, but fawning is what a friend of mine calls puppy nudging, where you're actually probably not ideal in this situation, but when you think about it in terms of humans and people that in your life, in your work life or your personal life, that might cause trauma to you, that you can try and befriend them and be kind to them and pander towards them, try and make that environment as less fractious as possible. So you might offer to make tea if it's a boss who is being causing trauma, being a bit toxic, over demanding, or an angry colleague or something, where you're feeling fearful, but you want to make that situation better, and that is called fawning. And you hear that in abusive relationships as well, where the person who is being abused will be very loving towards the other person, so that they try and reduce the risk of trauma as much as possible. And so those are all things that we feel when we experience that instant trauma. And this is my very artistic drawing here, so forgive me for this. So most people will be at rest. So you can see my blue line there of trauma. So you're at rest, you're on the beach, you're living your best life, everything's chilled, and then the bad things happens and your adrenaline goes up, your cortisol goes up, and you remain in a traumatic situation till you escape. And let's all assume we knew that we needed to run in right angles, and so we all managed to escape, and then you begin to recover. So you might become exhausted and you might need a sleep, might have a few nightmares, but you will begin to recover and begin to de-escalate, and then you'll have a really great story to tell in the pub, and at family do's, and then you become back to at rest and you carry on your life as normal. But a lot of people who are experiencing extended periods of trauma, whether it's childhood trauma or adult trauma, they remain at that dotted line at the top all of the time. So they're always triggered in a trauma response. So everything is loud. If you've ever visited anyone or experienced anyone who is in that midst of trauma or struggling to cope with previous trauma, lots of things can be loud. The telly can be on, they can be dogs barking, they can be, I used to visit a lot of houses when I worked in the youth justice service, where the telly would be on. There'd be a strange person in the corner. I didn't know if they were meant to be there. There might be a toddler running around and two dogs barking, and that was the normal heightened level that those people live at every day. And so really role modeling and bringing that energy down is something that is a really useful tool. I'm not the softest natural speaker. I'm a natural entertainer and an extrovert, but really softening my voice, really bringing it down, asking for the television to be turned off or the phone to be removed, taking those distractions away so everyone can really reduce their heart rate and their and find a calmer space to discuss or to move forward or communicate effectively, because it is really hard for them to de-escalate from that heightened place of trauma all of the time. And that's not a great way to get things done or to exist for that matter. So I'm going to cover off this just really quickly in a visual example for you. So this is my lovely picture of a brain, and you have your prefrontal cortex, which is that really big part at the front. And you imagine that wrapped around your, if you imagine a fist with your fingers wrapped around your fist, um, you've got your prefrontal cortex covering the things underneath, and those things are the limbic system, which is the amygdala and the hippocampus. Now, your prefrontal cortex is all about rational thinking and processing, and what you're going to do when you get home, what you need to organize, pay your bills, walk the dog, get some dinner in, what you're planning for the weekend, all of those things. And then your amygdala is your survival part of your brain. And if you look at it, it's really small, isn't it? It's the tiniest part, but it does all your fight or flight. It gives you all your cortisol. It makes you want to go on adventures, jump out of airplanes, do whitewater rafting, and all of those things that when we were a lot younger, probably most of us really, really wanted to do or got some joy from. Um, but it isn't what we do all of the time, is it? And actually, most of the time, it isn't what we do. Um, and then you've got your hippocampus as well, which is the remembering part. So where you get your memory from, where you remember what you did last week, yesterday, what you agreed to do in that business meeting, all of those things come from your hippocampus. So if your brain is formed in a relatively average way, your prefrontal cortex is formed and your hippocampus and your amygdala sit comfortably under there and do the things they're meant to do when they're meant to do them. However, if you've experienced childhood trauma, your brain is physically different to someone who hasn't. So that prefrontal cortex is offline. It doesn't work properly. It doesn't cover those other things up. And a really good indicator of someone who is experiencing or has experienced trauma is whether or not they can remember stuff other than also menopause, which is something I'm experiencing myself. But they struggle to remember their childhood or certain parts of their lives when they were experiencing trauma. That is something that they really that will be really apparent to them. So it's something that you can look out for when they're talking to you and communicating with you. But if you've ever heard of that term, your lid is flipped, that is what this refers to. So if your prefrontal cortex is offline, you can imagine that front part, those four fingers flipping up. So your amygdala and your hippocampus are exposed underneath and raw, and that is what you're functioning with because your prefrontal cortex is not there to protect you anymore. And that is where people in trauma are functioning from all the way. So if we aren't able to reclose that lid, to flip that lid, the ability to communicate with them is really limited. I hope that makes sense to everyone. I'm a very hand gestury person, and it's weird when I can't see myself. Okay. So these are some of the harmful coping strategies when we consider people who have experienced trauma. So there's quite a long list there. And it looks quite depressing, doesn't it? But I do want to reassure you that it isn't a one-way ticket down to the bottom. And even if you have used some of these coping strategies when you've experienced trauma, what that's actually done is get you to where you are now. And so we're not going to beat ourselves up about those things. We are going to accept that and then make better choices with support where we feel psychologically safe. And move forward from that point, because unfortunately when you use these harmful coping strategies such as alcohol abuse, or you've experienced poor education, or you've been angry, or you're following generational patterns and risky behaviors, disordered eating, any of that, it can lead to longer term consequences. So there is a significant impact on people who have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, who use harmful coping strategies that haven't been shown psychological safety within their lives. And those consequences are things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, incarceration, separation, single parenting. There's so many different ones. And it's really important to know that when we're walking around in our world and we're walking down the road and we think, "Cool, everyone else is normal. I wish I could just be normal like all of these people." We are all faking it. Okay, there is no such thing as normal, and everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has something behind the person that they're presenting that none of us know about. And there's that saying, isn't it, that says, if you can be anything, be kind, because you've no idea what silent battles people are facing. And it isn't quite as simple as that, because there's a lot in there around curiosity, okay, how we can be curious and how we can investigate what's going on for someone to enable them to feel safe. And this isn't about us being therapists, but this is about us providing psychological safety and literal safe spaces so that people can begin to take the steps that they need to heal from the trauma that they've experienced. Does anyone have any questions, or is there any comments in the chat before I go any further? Okay, okay. So when somebody turns up in your place of work, and they might turn up and appear unhappy, uncomfortable, they might be late, they might be slightly challenging or aggressive, they might look a bit uh, worse for wear, a little bit disheveled. I'm sure we've all been there at some point or another. What's really important there is that they feel safe enough to discuss that with their peers, with their managers, with the senior leadership team, that there is a space available and curiosity there to enable them to share what's going on for them. And I think that behavior is definitely a communication, and it's not a defiance. So by turning up in that way, that isn't a sign to say, "I don't want to be here, screw you, I'm out, I'm not interested in what you've got to tell me or what I've got to do today." It's an indication that something isn't okay for that person. Now, obviously, if someone is repeatedly turning up in presenting in that way, there's a conversation to be had. But if we go back to my values at the beginning, if you notice that from the beginning, if you are professionally curious, if you provide that safe space and those systems such as supervision, one-to-one support, informal catch-ups at the beginning of a day or the end of a day, where people feel safe enough to share, then you can head that off at the pass and you can put things in place. It might be a bit of leave, it might be an adjusted start or finish time, it might be a buddy, it might be checking in with your manager on a daily basis, because at the moment you've got other things going on that are really making you struggle. It might be reviewing your workload. But if you consider all of those things at the first possible instance, and you notice that change in a person because you are engaged enough with your staff, with your team, to be able to notice that subtle change, it will stop somebody leaving, it will stop somebody falling behind, it will stop somebody going off on long-term sick, it will stop somebody exploding. All of that from a place of noticing, of curiosity. There isn't any such thing as normal. I really want to drum that home to you all. I laugh at myself because I am presenting with this lovely blonde bob that I am enjoying in my late 40s now. I am perimenopausal. On the whole, I'm a director in a company as well as having my own business. I present as a normal functioning human being, but I can promise you that in my teens and in my 20s, I had every piercing and every tattoo and every hair color under the sun, and I did not want to be normal because I wanted people to know what was going on for me and that I wasn't okay. And you learn to mold and conform and shape, but everybody always thinks that everybody else has got their selves together, and it isn't true. It is just a version of ourselves that we're putting out there. And I think you find that if you trust in people, you don't have to overshare, you don't have to give them your life story, but if you begin to say, when somebody says, how are you doing, and you say, yeah, not great today, I've got it, I'm all right, but I'm just letting you know I'm not great today, and have those honest conversations, safety and communication and connection will start to grow from that space. So these are some of the things that we experience if we don't find safe spaces, if we don't find connection and community. These are the risks that out that are present if you have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, and can make you can determine the rest of your life, I think is the easiest way to explain that. I'm not going to read them out because they're too depressing, but you can have a look at that. And just so you know, at least 71% of British people have experienced 1 or more adverse childhood experience, and that is just what we know of. Okay, so it might be parental separation, it might be parental mental health, it might be domestic abuse, it could be substance misuse, it could be worse, other, worse things, loss, death. Um, and I'm not going to go into any details now because I haven't got the time to do the work with you in this hour. But if we don't put in those protective spaces, if we don't have that professional curiosity, that level of connection, this is what we risk. And the impact of that on our workspace in our lives is long-term sickness, long-term poor health, instability in employment, instability in paying the bills, instability in keeping a safe roof over your heads. So those things have a massive knock-on effect to losing staff, to retaining good staff, to people feeling safe and doing the best that they can in their jobs, to enabling your companies, your businesses to thrive. All of those things stem from that psychological safety and that connection to your organization.
Ellie, I'm just gonna, Helen's put a comment in the chat. I just want to say it to you in case you want to comment on it, saying,
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think people want authenticity, they want the fake pretend world.
I think it's really sad. Did you say it was Helen?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Helen, that's really sad that you feel that way. And I wonder where your experiences of that come from. My experiences of employment have been mixed in my life. My experiences of friendship have been mixed in my life. But I can say now at almost 50 that the connection to my employer, the connection to my friends, my community are very genuine. And I personally, and I know this is my job and what I'm very passionate about, but need people to show up as themselves. And in the staff that I manage, in the leadership team that I work with, that's a really, really important thing to us. And if that is your experiences, I wonder if that's the right place for you. I wonder if there's something that you could address, someone you can address that with, within the spaces that you're in. Maybe there's some honest conversations that need to happen, or maybe there's some new people that you might need to find out there. Um, when I run a day's training, we have a lot of time to talk about this, and I really make sure that people are okay at the end of the day, and we have lots of time for debriefing and connection. So if you would like a conversation with me, I'm happy to stay on and chat with you. I don't want to send anyone away in a poorer state than when they started. That would be really bad as a trauma informed trainer, wouldn't it?
Hey,
Um,
Helen's added another comment which might sort of make the context a
yeah, thank
bit
you.
clearer, saying, Ellie, like you said, you're pretending to fit in, faking it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
and we do because we're trained, especially I think British people seem to be a bit more repressed and a bit more, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. And you think, I'm not fine. I'm actually terrible. Why did I say fine? And it's what we're conditioned to do. So I think we got to step out of that norm a bit, because the minute you start to crack open your shell, you will find that everyone else has shells to crack open themselves as well. But we're not going to overshare our life story at the bus stop with a stranger that we've only just met. Nevertheless, having that, yeah, things are a bit tough today, and finding your safe people. Um, so, I mean, it leads on to my next slide really nicely. You can see my Batman badge there saying Wonder. I'm actually going to have that made into badges for when I deliver training, because I think the best thing you can think is, I wonder what's going on for them. I wonder if they're okay. I wonder why that happened. Oh, I was just wondering, when you did this thing, where that came from. If we have psychological safety, and I am focusing this particular hour on the workplace, but in life, if you feel safe in your friendship groups, in your family groups, with your partner, if you have one, in your workplace, great things can come from that. But if you don't, and that isn't the culture that you have fostered within your spaces and places, you will find it incredibly difficult to function at a stable and menopausal brain, reliable level. I said it earlier, I said the word, I don't know, it's gone. So if you make people feel safe, enable them to speak up, enable them to make mistakes, enable them to be themselves. That doesn't mean that's not me saying everybody needs to come to work every day, in floods of tears or a blind rage with their shirt untucked and odd shoes on. I mean, I'm sure we've all been there in our lives. I definitely have. But what it does mean is that we can have those conversations. We have a connection to a specific person. We can share those things, and we can make those practical steps to enabling psychological safety and enabling everyone to be the best that they can be. And that is what trauma informed workplaces, that is what psychological safety, that is what trauma informed approaches are all about. Safe people do safe work and build safe connections. That, I mean, that is it in a nutshell. If you feel safe, you're going to smash it out the park. You're going to do a great job. So I would be saying, what is the culture in your workplace? Do you feel safe to talk to your manager? Do you feel safe to speak up if you need to? Do your staff feel that they can come to you if they've done something wrong and made a mistake? And how are you going to approach that? What does that look like? How do you unpick that? Do you have those honest conversations, or is it a big blow up and then brushed under the carpet, or even worse, handed you notice and off you go? Those things are really important. Do people mysteriously disappear? Or have you got an amazing staff team that's been around for 15 years, and people have increased and progressed in their roles, and everyone has a really great connection, because those things make money, save money, and build great places to work. That is for sure. So check your culture, consider your culture. And when you leave here today, it'd be really great if you had a conversation with your teams, with your bosses, with your peers around that connection and that culture check in your workspaces. And if you take something away from our hour together today, it would be, I wonder. I wonder what's going on there. I wonder what's driving that behavior, and really shift from blame. Well, they're not doing it. They haven't done it. I've done 7, they've done 2, to that real open curiosity. And I can promise you that will create safe spaces, safe people, and a thriving culture. So these are, and I've said safe an awful lot of times, but these are the 6 principles of trauma informed practice. So you have safety, trust, choice, collaboration, empowerment, and cultural consideration. And if you consider all of those things within your life, within your workspace, then you will know that you will have all the little joined up gingerbread people in the cultural consideration, and you will have a thriving you will have a thriving workspace. I want you to think just for a minute about what those 6 principles mean to you. I'm not sure if we can, if we've got the time, but in a sentence, what you think about that within your workspace, what you think, if you consider those, if you've seen these principles before, if you consider them when you're building work patterns, when you're planning your year ahead, when you're considering diaries. Do you consider the individual? Um, do you work together? Are you done with and not to? If you've got any thoughts about any of those things, do you have choice in what you do and how you do it? Do you trust the people around you? Do you feel empowered to be the best of your ability?
Um,
Any comments that you might want to make? I know it's a big question, but I'm just aware of the time.
I was just going to sort of share any that I've worked for some very large organisations for the NHS and the
Yeah.
BBC, and sometimes these sort of principles are quite hard
Hmm.
to get right in an organisation that employs 20,000 people. Equally, it can be hard to get it in an organisation that employs 20 people, but possibly easier. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, Ali? Because it shouldn't be hard. And
No.
actually, if you do all of your recruitment and write your policies and procedures based on your values and principles, then you're going to attract the people that aspire to holding those values and principles themselves.
Yeah.
And that is, you have to practice what you preach in that essence, I suppose. Um, and this is a really good foundation. I mean, you can get these 6 key principles of trauma informed practice anywhere. If you Google it, there's all kinds of different pictures. This is just the one that I created. But if you really think about, I've just run a series of interviews in the organisation that I work in, the charity that I work for. And we based all of our interview questions on the values of our organisation. So there was no way that people were going to come. We shared our values and our mission statement in the job advert as well. So you're then attracting like-minded people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does.
Any thoughts from anyone else, or have I asked too big a question?
I know we've got people from a variety of organisations, so do feel free to
I
share
want, I,
your observations.
I'd like to give an example, and I won't name any names, but I go to a lot of different organisations to train, and on this occasion I went to a school. Now there was no leadership team in that school on my training. They'd put all frontline staff on there, mostly pastoral staff, and my thought was, who are they going to take this back to? We actually had 2 days together. Who are we going to take who are they going to take it back to if the leadership haven't been part of this training? How bought into it are they in being trauma informed? It's not something they come to work and do to the children. It is a way of being, a way of existing, a culture within your lives, within your organizations. And the headmaster was kind of hot-footing around, hopping backwards and forwards. Hello, Ellie, lovely to see you. Great, come in, come in. We've been really looking forward to it. And I want you to tell you that we've been really doing loads of work on trauma informed since we booked your training. So I think we're pretty much there now. And I said, oh, great. What have you been up to? What have you been doing? And he said, well, every Tuesday morning when everyone comes in, we haven't got time on a Monday, but on a Tuesday, I call all the teaching staff together and I tell them all the traumatic things that have happened to the children in the weekend just gone, so that they can support those children when they go back into their tutor groups and into their classes. And I kind of went, oh, um, and where do the teaching staff get support from then? How long? By the way, this meeting was 20 minutes long. So in 20 minutes, all these teachers who had great lesson plans and all the thoughts of what they were going to do with their day were told a load of traumatic stuff that had happened to, a handful of children, and then sent off back to their class. And that was that. So anyway, I convinced him to book in half an hour half a day after the training with his leadership team, which I actually did for free because I thought it was really, really important. And we changed that practice.
We've got
So
some comments. Ellie. So Acacia says, I think some of our colleagues are familiar with a TI approach where customers are concerned, I'm in
Yes,
social housing, but may not have thought about this from a within the workplace perspective. But the same
absolutely.
empathy
Yeah.
applies. We're all people with histories, emotions, and our own
Mhm.
coping strategies.
Mhm.
Joe says, really does depend on if the team leader builds a culture of psychological safety. And I
Yeah.
guess that's, you've just given a great example of that. And Heidi said, we have a very good culture where I work. Sorry, just moved that. I've just lost it. Oh, where's that comment gone? Anyway, basically saying that there's a very good culture where they work, but has worked previously in places where it talked about sort of mental health, but actually there were no signs of
Mm.
it being very positively shown. And I'll just share a comment that came in sort of a little while back from Sharon, because it's probably that psychological safety in action. So Sharon works in the emergency department, had a junior sister who was very open in admitting that she was having an anxious day. She'd got a lot going on in her life. Her sharing this allowed me at a later stage in my life that was really tricky to have the confidence to also share that I was
Mm.
having an anxious day. I hope that now as a junior sister, by admitting this, it gives the confidence to others to share if they are. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. It's not fantastic that you were having an anxious day, but it's really fantastic that you could share that and that somebody being open enabled you to feel safe enough to be open. I think that that is it. It's contagious. Um, and I'm really sorry that team managers, line managers, senior leadership teams aren't always embracing of this trauma-informed culture. Um, but it is something that you can discuss, you can share with your colleagues. You could go back and do a 5-minute update in your team meetings. And really, I could talk about the 6 key principles. Well, I do talk about the 6 key principles of trauma informed practice for half a day. Um, and so they really are very, very important things to consider if you want to work in a psychologically safe environment.
We've had another comment from Lisa as well saying, Ellie, I think it's so true with big organisations, especially when you sit in a middle senior management position.
Yeah.
In the end, you can only affect change where you are, but it's difficult when it's not adopted by managers above you.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It is. I empathize. I've been there, I promise you. I'm not there now, but I was there. But you can make change. You can challenge. Challenge doesn't have to be conflict. And if you use the wonder, remember I wonder, my lovely wonder badge, and say, oh, that's really interesting you say that. I wonder how it would be if we A, B, and C. And if they're no, 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 it would be really interesting to know why no. Why is that not okay? Because evidence tells us that if our staff are safe, if our teams are safe, safe people do safe work, which enables beneficiaries to feel safe. And so there isn't really an argument against it. It also saves money. It also retains good staff. It also reduces sickness. So there really isn't defensible reasons for why they wouldn't do that. And it's whether, it's practicing, I guess, those honest conversations, especially if you're someone that feels that you struggle with what you might perceive to be conflict, because challenge doesn't have to be conflict. Challenge can be warm because challenge benefits everybody. It is tough, isn't it? So I really don't want to let any of you go, and I'd like to keep you all for another hour. But I'm just going to whiz through the next couple of bits. So language does really matter, so much so that I've written it twice, I can see. Language matters. How we talk about people is how we're showing our front face. It is a it is a culture that bleeds into the rest of the organization, not just how we talk about them, but those of you who need to take notes, those of you who might work in hospitals or schools or um, uh, any other area that deals with potentially vulnerable clients, vulnerable beneficiaries. If we're writing they're vile, if we're writing, they didn't want to, they chose not to. All of that language is really damaging because it shows no insight and no curiosity to what is behind the presentation that we're receiving in front of us. So really considering how you would feel if you read something about yourself that way. Oh, Sharon turned up in a right state today, took herself off for a cry in the toilets and didn't finish the 12 things that she was supposed to do. Instead of, I was really worried about Sharon today. I did catch her briefly and we've got a planned meeting for tomorrow. She really didn't seem to be doing very well. So I made her a cup of tea, told her not to worry about this, that, and this, and just focus on these two things. And tomorrow we'll make a plan. There's a massive difference there, isn't there? Um, Staff and colleagues are whole people. What are their goals? What do they aspire to? Why are they there? And as I said, aligning your organizational values with personal growth, making sure you're attracting the right people. If you have the influence to the influence to be able to impact that, then that's absolutely great. And even if you feel that you don't, there should be a way of feeding up. There should be a way of feeding up views of opportunities, of ways in which you could work better, easier, more intuitively, more connected. There should be a way in which you can pass those things up. And if there isn't, well, get in contact and I'll come and do some training within your organisation, and we can unpick what's going on there. So these things are proven to improve the impact of trauma on individuals. So sometimes people say to me, well, they sound a bit fluffy. Well, maybe they do, but they are evidence-based things that reduce the impact of trauma and increase the feeling of psychological safety and enable people to take steps to recover from their trauma. So, mindfulness, time in nature, exercise, healthy relationships, and trusted people and services. And that's why they're in bold, because you're all in services, you're all coming here from a workplace. And so you can really think about, do you work with trusted people? Is your service trusted? Are the relationships in your organization healthy? Do you have a culture of um, taking a break away from the screen to take some mindfulness? Do you have a culture of walking meetings? I used to work for an organization where we were quite near the countryside, so often we would take our meetings outside and walk around and notice deer and hare and birds of prey and all sorts of things, because it was really productive but also really good for your well-being. These are 5 things that you could take back to your team today and just ask the question about, I wonder how we do this, I wonder how we build this in, because building this into our workplaces will keep people around, will make people work hard, because they're benefits. They are benefits to our mind, body, and our ability to function. I'm not going to introduce you to Liz because sadly we just don't have time. I just want to leave you with these thoughts. You are so important. Your life experiences are really valid, and I can't remember the name of the person who said, we're trauma informed with the people we work, we deliver the service to, but not within our organization. This just does, it works. It has to encompass everything. It is a way of being. It isn't, you don't walk through your office door and you're trauma informed. It is a way of existing within our society, within your own communities, in your life and outside of your life, work life. And so I would argue that it's not a trauma-informed environment if your staff don't feel as supported as the beneficiaries do. Your professional experiences count, your personal experiences count, and your organisation can support you with this. A trauma-informed ethos is for everyone, and you can make a difference. And so those are some things that you might want to take back and discuss with your team. So this is a question for you. What are the tangible things that you could incorporate into your work, and what one takeaway there would be? So if you want to pop in the box, one takeaway from today and one thing you might be able to do in your business, in your organization, and that would be great. And the following slide is just my contact details if anyone would like to contact me about further training. Ali, I don't know if you can, is there any way that you can send them round to anyone so that I can click off this and see some faces for a minute?
Yeah, if you wanna, yeah, we can do that, Ellie.
Or
Um,
anyone can take a photo of this if they want to. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got a website, etc., etc.
Here we go.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, what takeaways do we have in those chat boxes?
Hold on, bear with me. Heidi, wonder is my main takeaway. Katie's had to dash, but said it was a great session. So, anyone else want to share in the chat any takeaways for them? I mean, we can't forget the run at 90 degrees and
Oh,
you'll escape the crocodile. That's got to be the top tip of the day, hasn't it?
yeah.
But I think for me, Ellie, a lot of what I've heard is around that sort of good management practice. Actually, if you've got that good management practice around regular one-to-ones, knowing your team, knowing them as individuals, knowing what goes on for them outside of work, it's knowing them as a human being and connecting with them regularly as a human being, you're going to be able to spot the signs when things aren't going so well, when they're having a
Hmm.
difficult time. And training and awareness for you as a manager means that you're going to have the confidence to be able to start a conversation and sort of support them in that conversation. We've got another couple of comments coming through. So,
Yeah.
saying for important conversations with management to listen, not just hear us. You're right, because there's a difference, isn't there, Linda?
Hmm.
Michelle saying regular open communication, listening, and being more aware. And Acacia saying, I think we could ensure our HR training for managers has a trauma informed lens on it, not strictly based only on policies, but people. Yeah.
I have done training with HR teams before. I mean, they are literally supposed to be the people focus,
Yeah.
and it isn't always what we see,
Yeah.
is it?
No, and having, come from a background of HR myself, often, who supports HR? It's often,
Hmm.
often forgotten, meant to soak everything up, but who supports HR?
Yeah,
Ellie, thank you so much for
my pleasure.
sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us today. I hope everyone found the session valuable and insightful. So really, just as Ellie has said, encourage you all to sort of take the takeaways and maybe put them into action in whatever way you can in your workplace. And if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, we're going to share a copy of the recording with you, and I'll share Ellie's contact details in that email. But do feel free to connect on LinkedIn with myself and with Ellie if we're not already connected. So our next webinar is Savvy Ways to Create Psychological Safety. So I guess a bit of a follow on from what we've
Good
been
follow
talking
on.
about today. That's on the 28th of January, and we're going to be joined by Sarah Harvey, who's the author of Savvy Conversations, a practical framework for effective workplace relationships. And we're going to be sharing some practical tools with you for building workplace cultures where everyone is free to speak up. So, as I said, we'll send you the link to the recording for today's session, and we'll also include the contact details for Ellie and the registration for the next webinar. But in the meantime, just to wish everybody, can I say, is it too early? Very Merry
No,
Christmas and all the best for 2026, and look forward to seeing some of you again in 2026. Thank you so much for joining us.
bye everyone. Bye.